Hey gang, I'm MyRadar meteorologist Matthew Cappucci. Tornado season is upon us and it's soon to ramp up big time. Most folks know that tornadoes are rated on a scale from 0 to 5, but have you ever wondered how those ratings are assigned? There's a lot of science that goes into it. Let's break it all down. By the way, if you're joining us on YouTube, be sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel. After all, it is tornado season and we have tons of great science that you will definitely not want to miss. Obviously, tornadoes come in different shapes, sizes, and strengths. Some might barely be able to unroof a doghouse. Others can pulverize entire neighborhoods and lay siege to a community. To learn more about tornado ratings, we first need to introduce a guy named Tetsuya, aka Ted Fujita. Dr. Fujita was a renowned Japanese-American scientist and is regarded as the father of severe weather meteorology. He discovered microbursts and downbursts, coined the term mini-swirls after discovering tornado-like vortices and hurricanes, and revolutionized our understanding of thunderstorms. He is most famous, though, for the scale that bears his name, the Fujita scale. He introduced it in 1971, and it was employed for use with most tornadoes in the US beginning in 1973. Direct in-situ observations of a tornado's winds is essentially impossible because, let's face it, getting an anemometer inside a tornado is a little bit tricky. Instead, the Fujita scale uses damage as a proxy for wind speed. Most tornadoes he estimated to be F0s or F1s. F0 tornadoes had winds of 40 to 72 miles per hour, with F1s accounting for winds up to 112 miles per hour. Most F0 tornadoes were barely enough to knock down hardwood trees or damage sheds. Strong F1s, however, could peel back the roof of a building, snap telephone poles, or even flip mobile homes. About 3/4 of tornadoes were F0s and F1s. F4 and F5 tornadoes, on the other hand, were labeled as violent, producing devastating or incredible damage. An F4 was 1 in 100, and an F5, 1 in 1,000. F5s had winds of 261 to 318 miles per hour. That's a little more than twice the takeoff speed of a Boeing 737. Some F5 tornadoes can be more than a mile wide, like this one on May 3, 1999. It razed much of Moore, Oklahoma, a suburb on the south side of Oklahoma City. Here's some of the damage left behind. Winds were estimated by mobile Doppler radar to have exceeded 300 miles per hour. But there were flaws in the initial Fujita scale. The scale was somewhat open-ended, and different meteorologists could rate the same damage differently based on subjective interpretations. Moreover, the scale often didn't take into account different building types, i.e. industrial or commercial versus residential. That made for some disparities in ratings. Ted Fujita passed away in 1998, but the legacy of his work continued as hundreds of scientists built upon what he'd started. In 2007, the enhanced Fujita scale was unveiled. It's now the standard for rating tornadoes in the US and Canada. The enhanced Fujita scale was developed by atmospheric scientists and structural engineers and does a better job of ascribing damage to wind speeds. Rigorous testing went into its division, including by experts at Texas Tech's Wind Science and Engineering Research Center. Under the new scale, winds aren't instantaneous, but rather it's based on 3-second gusts. That means an F5 is pretty similar to an EF5, even if their wind ranges look different on paper. More than half of all tornadoes are EF0s, with winds between 65 and 85 miles per hour. They're usually enough to knock down trees and cause vegetation damage, but most well-built structures are pretty much alright. A third of tornadoes are EF1s, which can strip off roofs, cause structural damage, etc. Once again, we get to EF5 tornadoes, which correspond to 3-second wind speeds topping 200 miles per hour. Cars can be mangled and thrown a quarter mile or more. Wood and debris become lethal projectiles. Often, all that remains is a bare foundation. EF5 tornadoes can generally only be survived underground. The last EF5 tornado to hit the United States was on May 20, 2013. It also hit Moore, Oklahoma, passing over the path of the 1999 F5. Here's a look at some of the damage that one caused. The best part of the enhanced Fujita scale is that much of the work is already done for us. There are 28 damage indicators that meteorologists can index into depending on what they find. Within each one are different levels or tiers of damage that correspond to wind speed. Let's say, for example, we find a damaged motel. That would be index 6. Now we have 10 different things we could look for with wind speeds that would match what we're seeing. If the canopy over the driveway is demolished, for instance, but the roof structure and the outer walls haven't collapsed, we'd estimate winds at 99 miles per hour, or anywhere between 81 and 118 miles per hour. Let's try a 2-story regular family home. If the slab is swept clean and it was well anchored, we've got 200 mile per hour winds easy. That's an EF5. There are some major flaws with tornado ratings in general, however. For starters, it's based on observed damage. If a tornado hits the middle of nowhere, it's rated an EFU or unidentified, even if we know it had 300-mile-per-hour winds. A famous example of this came in 2013, just 11 days after the Moore tornado. A world record 2.6-mile wide tornado touched down in El Reno, Oklahoma, just west of Oklahoma City. This tornado plowed through mainly open fields and did hit some stuff, but spared most neighborhoods. Tragically, 4 storm chasers perished, including legendary tornado researcher Tim Samaras. But here's the thing. We all know it was an EF4 or an EF5. Doppler radar estimated winds nearing 300 miles per hour within 500 feet of the ground. But it can only be rated an EF3 because only EF3 damage was found. That's a National Weather Service policy and a limiting factor of the enhanced Fujita scale. 2 of the most famous tornado researchers balked at the downgrading. Howie Bluesey at the University of Oklahoma said, quote, "There's no question this was an EF5, a sentiment also echoed by Chuck Doswell, but it sets a precedent for future tornado ratings. Should supplemental data be used to inform ratings when it's only available for a fraction of tornadoes? Additional data is always good. It helps us get the right answer, so to speak, but it betrays consistency because only some places get that extra data. Most tornadoes in rural landscapes never realize their full destructive potential, so to speak. If a tornado only plows through forest, even if it's an EF5, you can only rate EF3 to EF4. That's because the maximum wind speed that can be assigned to tree damage is 167 miles per hour. Trees would all fail below that threshold. Karen Kasiba and Josh Werman at the Center for Severe Weather Research believe that most tornadoes are underrated. They cite exactly that issue. Many or most of them are at least a category stronger than the rating they get. Many or most of them are at least a category stronger than the rating they get. They just don't have the opportunity to show off what they can do, as morbid as that sounds. There may come a day when we can more efficiently use photogrammetry or photography data, infrasound signatures, or air pressure data to give us a better idea of tornado strengths. Until then, we have the enhanced Fujita scale. Severe weather season is ramping up, and it's time to make sure you and your family have a plan to stay safe. Fortunately, we'll be with you every step of the way throughout every storm. I'm MyRadar meteorologist Matthew Cappucci.